been talking about the startup spirit all day. You had Vani Kola on stage earlier. She was talking about how there are such few companies that are founded and led by women. The access that women have to capital is also very, very limited. And one of the things we heard on this stage was how women are still apologetic about how, their relationship with money should look like. So we have two very, very important conversations coming up. I want you all to settle down. I'm going to give you a moment to settle down. Please settle down and we will resume in just a moment. Yeah. Please settle down and take your seats. Take your seats, please. Okay, I first want to welcome on stage someone who reflects the Kickstarter spirit, First, let's welcome on stage Naiyya Saggi. Naiyya Saggi managed to create Baby Chakra, Good Glam, and a host of successful ventures, rather, I was going to say venture capitalists, ventures. Please welcome on stage Naiyya Saggi. Can we have it on stage, please? There you are. Hi. Good to see you.
Likewise, good to see you as well.
Let's chat for a couple of seconds before we get the panel on. Yeah. So, I'm just going to be calling up everybody else as well, but I want to just spend a few minutes talking to you. You know, we've been talking all day about how, though we see so many women framing the headlines as success stories, you're one, actually women's access to capital, women's even remaining in the workforce are numbers that aren't telling a great story. So why is there a gap between the success stories of women like yourself and what's actually happening numerically?
You know, so it's a great question. The interesting stat there is that there are less women in the workforce today than there were in my mother's time. Right?
Yes.
And that's the reality of things.
Yes.
That said, you know, Barkha, a couple of months back, I was working with Invest India, another leading publication, and Ladies Who Lead. We came out with a report of 100 women entrepreneurs across India who were creating disproportionate impact. Right? And I think it was unprecedented because people couldn't fathom that there were even 100 amazing women entrepreneurs who were at a certain scale.
Yeah.
So I think it's a dichotomy, like you very correctly point out, and I think the biggest reason for that is the enabling infrastructure, right? You have women who are really accomplished, super capable, gone to the best schools, etc. There is a lack of either support from the family, or there's a lack of belief in the venture ecosystem because it's largely dominated still today by men, on what a woman who's capable really looks like. There's no success story.
You are a success story. What has been the toughest hurdle for you to jump?
I think just a belief. Even in, you know, Barkha, you know this, I went to the top business school in the world, I was at McKinsey, all of the good stuff happening. When I came back to India, however, my angel check, my conversation with the investor there was about, you know, how I'm going to make, you know, Baby Chakra at that point in time the largest company there is for mothers and doctors and, you know, in the globe, etc. And the only question I was asked was, but what happens when you become pregnant? Who runs the company then? You're the sole founder. And it was staggering for me. I literally left the room because I was shocked that there was so much bias in just that conversation. So I think that for any woman, I think that is the story, right? I think it's changed now, fortunately though, because again, it goes back to representation. You can't be what you can't see. So if you see the stories of success, you see the stories of entrepreneurs play out, right? Then that becomes the aspiration. That also changes the narrative in venture funds and IC meetings. That yeah, I mean, women are super capable. They're building really large scale impact.
Well, I think women need to see real life models like you and the other women we just going to call on stage now. So thank you, Naiyya, for being here. I want to welcome on stage also Bincy Cherian, Sabeena Shaji, Zeeshan Mukhi, and Ranjana Maitra. Can we please have all of you on stage for what promises to be a very interesting conversation. You know, we used to talk about spaces being gender equal. But I think we moved on beyond that conversation to how places can actually bust stereotypes beyond gender. Ranjana, I'll hand it over to you now. Yeah.
Thank you, Barkha, so much. After this scintillating performance and talk of Janvi, I think you all may be a little, sorry about that, you may be a little dazed right now, but I think we'll try to spruce it up. It's been a great day, and I think after 3 years, We the Women has been on in-person mode. We have from CII, we have been partners with We the Women for last 3 years. But it has been an amazing day, and I think you all need to clap for Barkha for what she has put together. I think nobody else can put together what Barkha has done. I really, really acknowledge, I really appreciate what she does. And, it's a variance, from the smallest to the largest. She's just not, she sort of mixes with everyone. I'll just tell you one incident about Barkha, because I've been following her for many years. And I keep telling her, my housekeeper of 30 years, he is so enamored of Barkha that he says that I have seen her pulling out bodies, during the Kargil time. And that's the memory that he has, from the grassroots people. So, Barkha is Barkha. So big hands to, cheers to Barkha.
I have to pop my head back in and say thank you. I heard Barkha so many times backstage. I had to come and see what was happening.
Thank you, Barkha.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start off with our session, which is having, great places to work for. I think what we have done is, Naiyya has already, been here before. Bincy, Zeeshan, and Sabeena, right? Yeah. So I'm sorry, today my head is going a little round. But, we have talked it threadbare about, what are the things that women need to do, what, are the great places to work with, what is about gender parity. Yesterday I was doing a session at the US consulate in Mumbai, and the Consul General himself said that this is a no-brainer, that, parity has to be there, and even in the US, parity is not there, and we have to do action. And all you have to tell industries is it improves your bottom line. And that was a new thing which I heard the other day, that he said, just say that it improves your bottom line to have diversity in your workspace. So I think with that, this topic, we can start off by asking, all our panelists to speak a few words, and then I'll, of course, talk about it a little more. It's Women's International Week, and most companies, the HR, I'm not talking about HR alone, they think that before cupcakes, roses, and a card does the needful and they check a box. Today is not about that, right? It's much more than that. It's about living every day and making it great for the workspaces for women. So why don't we start with you, Naiyya, or what you would like to say about your thoughts on this topic?
So at the Good Glam Group, we are South Asia's largest digital FMCG conglomerate. So we have a house of brands. How many of you have heard of MyGlam? Okay, super. That's one of our brands. Momsco, great. Sirona, great. Oh, super. Organic Harvest, Saint Botanica, Baby Chakra. And we have a house of media assets as well. Popexo, Miss Malini, Scoop Whoop, Tweak. We recently acquired that, right? So for us, we are in the business of beauty, personal care. And guess who's our demographic? It's all the women like me here and like you over here, right? So it's super critical. I mean, you're absolutely right when you say it makes sense to have women represented in leadership positions, especially in a company like ours. We have 65% women in our teams, which is one of the highest there is for a consumer tech company. And we also have two co-founders, me and Priyanka, who are women of this unicorn. And in our top CXXO, we have about our CEO of brands is actually a woman as well, right? So for us, I mean, it's a no-brainer. But I think the important realization we've had is that I think it's super critical that as women ourselves and as leaders ourselves, we really make a space for other women to find their voice and to be their most authentic selves. I think that's something that really holds women back. Apart from, of course, all the other policies, etc., that we have to put in place, and really setting targets for women to be hired in different roles, etc. But I think the one thing that women really seek is meaning from the jobs they do, from the work they do. And it's super critical, when you look around you, in your enabling ecosystem, how your leaders are, what roles are they playing in giving you and giving all of us that voice to articulate our thoughts. Because, if we don't have our voice heard, then it's no use. And this whole sort of construct of having different voices come in and help make the best decisions, business decisions, the best business calls, the best people calls, does not play out. So I think one thing we've really worked hard is consciously training our teams, our leaders, in ensuring that if there's a woman in the room, it is mandatory for her voice to be heard. And I think it's a very simple hack, but it's actually made a very big difference in the way teams are run, the meetings are run, and I think even in the way we've seen business outcomes shape for us as a group. I think the second thing I think we underestimated so much is safety. right? The good thing, fortunately, is that our headquarters in Bombay, I mean, I think Bombay is more or less a very, very safe city. So the women there feel safe if they have to work, whatever, late hours, etc. In Delhi, which is where we have our other set of brands and large offices there, right? I think there's a disproportionate emphasis put on safety, on the infrastructure there, on who's coming in, who's coming out late at night, tracking women when they go back home from work, and ensuring that everybody's safe. So, you know, I think it sounds very simple. You know, I won't talk about like the larger sort of regulatory environment and the policy because we can go on about it, but I think two simple things. And I think the third thing, the enabling environment, not just in the workplace, but also at home. I was just chatting with you, right? We have a very important initiative which Baby Chakra and the Moms Co run called the Equal Parent. And that's being run, of course, in our group, but also with 30 other corporates, where we're basically saying, if mothers have to win, fathers have to lean in. Right. It's very simple, right? The reason I'm here today, I have a 4-year-old daughter called Arya. The reason I'm here today is because my husband, Sandeep, is with Arya tonight. I won't be here probably otherwise, right? And that's the reality. So with Equal Parent, what we've been doing is doing circles in these different corporates where we're asking dads, what are the challenges you're facing? What are the unconscious biases you're facing from your managers when you say, bacha bimar hai, mujhe pick karne jana hai. You get the response, biwi nahi hai kya? You have to challenge that. You have to question that. And how do you get the tools and the confidence to do that? That is the purpose of Equal Parent. So I think it's a large, you know, movement. I think we're all on that journey. We're like literally on step 1 of that journey together. But I'm very optimistic where this will lead us.
Thank you, Naiyya. I think she brought about very good, pointers about equal parenting. And I think that's coming of age in today's world, that, the parents have to play an equal role. I think most of the tech companies, if you see, they're much ahead of the curve rather than the MSMEs and the other industries. So we also have to work in that field. And the new startups, of course, they do that. I was talking to my niece the other day, and she said that people look down upon the guy if he's not helping his wife in the kitchen nowadays, But that was not true, when I was, in the industry 28 years back. Now that's the norm. So coming to you, Zeeshan, because she said about equal parenting, what are your thoughts on that? And what would you like to say?
Well, I think, let me put it firstly in terms of what I believe in. I completely agree with what she's saying. Have I been an equal parent all my life? I would say no. My wife actually has had a bigger role in upbringing my children. Although I have tried my best to actually be there at the important occasions, like, throughout these years. My wife is actually now back full-time in her career, and she enjoys her role, in what she does. And I am very excited for her, because I can see her really enjoying that phase, and now our kids are slightly older. So that's, so I can relate to what she's saying, but there have been times when she's traveling actually a lot more than me, where I have to take the role. And it's also made me a lot more closer with my children. And, it does give me the opportunity to spend time with them when she's out. And, we've built a different relationship with the kids. I'm enjoying it.
Sure. Thank you. Bincy, would you like to add something? I don't know if there are other mics here.
No, it's okay. I use this. No, like what we are saying, like some years back, many years back, during my times of my mother, it was hardly thinkable when a woman has to go out for a job. It was challenging then. But things have changed now. Now, like society has now accepted that women have to go for a job. They have got an equal status. At least society is changing a lot. But one thing which I would like to point out is, like, say, when in India, when the number of women in workforce has increased, but the number of women in executive roles or the C-suite and all, it's still very low. Say, a recent survey said in US, over the last 5 years, C-suite roles increased from 22 to 27% in the last 5 years. But in India, in a different study says it's actually gone down. While the entry-level workforce has increased, the executive roles have actually come down. So we have to think of that drastically. No, I'm saying women have to enter the workforce. That is all important. We'll have to work parallelly towards it. We'll have to do flexible work timings, creche and other things. That's all parallelly we'll have to work. But at the same time, we have to groom our women workforce to rise to the higher executive roles.
Sure, I think she brought out a very good point. Before I hand it over to Sabeena, yeah. So I want to say that they are the 3 M's which we call mobility, maternity and marriage. So what happens at the entry level, you see that there'll be almost 50-50, at least I'm talking from a tech world perspective of TCS and Wipro, there'll be almost a 50-50%. As they go higher the ladder, you know, either it's their husband's career which comes first, so mobility, or marriage or maternity, you know. So now most companies are having lot of policies in place, which is a no-brainer actually, to ensure that, you know, women come back to work. And how do they do that? I'll give a personal experience, and I think the time is now for action and not to just speak about this in whatever terms, and I'm sure you all have experiences to say. In my last role at Wipro, when I was handling about 4,000 people globally across 3 continents, I made a KRA for myself that I will improve it, and I made it 55% women, and then you know, the other person was men. It was not for anyone else, it was for me. The satisfaction that it gave me, I think I still have that satisfaction in myself. Even now when I'm working with the University of New Haven, I've ensured that all my team is women. Though at the leadership level, it's more male, and I'm only the woman of color out there. So, you know, I think you make the choices, but at the same time, you also have to ensure that you deliver. As a woman, you cannot say that, you know, there are glass ceilings. Yes, maybe, yes, to some extent, yes, you have to work harder and ensure that you break those glass ceilings. I'll come to you, Sabeena,
Yes.
to say what your thoughts are.
Thanks, Ranjana. As you rightly said, a lot of talk has been going around. We have heard it many times about diversity, equity and inclusion. That has been a hot topic all along. This Women's Day also, we are hearing a lot about that. But the thing, it's not an option anymore. I mean, there's no choice for organizations to embrace DEI policies and practices in their things. But how the organizations contribute to or make an environment where they make women more comfortable in their natural setting, and they can, it's not, I don't think, let me ask the young children here or the young kids here, how many of you would want any positive discrimination, any chances being offered to you just because you're a woman, or would you want it the other way around where everybody is treated equally? Would you want any positive discrimination being done against you? I don't think the young generation today or the women of even our age, they don't want that to happen. We just want an environment where there is an equal footing, where we are treated equally as men, based on our merits, based on our meritocracy, right? So support systems, as all of you said, it is very important, and that goes a long way in ensuring that. For organizations like Federal Bank, because we have been chosen as the great place to work for women the 2nd year consecutively, based on the voices of women employees across the board. So the survey happens, and every woman responds to it the way they feel about the organization, right? So if that feeling can be an all-pervasive feeling where people feel that they're more in their natural setting, they can come to work as if and feel work-life balance happening more as a natural thing, there'll be more women coming to workforce, and even you see progressions like what is happening in our organization.
Thank you very much. I think she brought out a very good point about, you know, doing surveys. Yesterday at, you know, the TCS's head of diversity and inclusivity, you know, whom I know since the day I joined TCS, Dr. Ritu Anand, she was saying when they did a survey, they thought that the women will come back with saying like, we want flexible hours, we want creches, we want this, we want that. But you know what the women came up with? They came up with, we want more opportunities. We want to be mentored more for leadership positions. We want more coaching to be done. We want more seat at the table. She said, that's amazing. You know, this is what the women of today want. They are not talking, I mean, that is a given that you will get maternity leave, you will have creches, you have that. That is like a given. Like before the outsourcing started in India, it was the labor arbitrage was the issue, right? Later on, labor arbitrage was given. What they wanted is how can you improve our processes? How can you give us, you know, 50% more on that? So it's the same thing today that's happening, that is changing. So any of you who would like to take
so,
that
you know, मैं अपनी टीम को काफ़ी बोलती हूँ, अगर कुछ बनना है तो कुछ हटकर करना है, right? And I think the women of today, How many of you are super ambitious? कि कुछ बहुत बड़ा बनाना है life में? Raise your hand. Don't not raise your hand, huh? Don't let me down. Raise your hand, all of you. Because listen, we have it with us today. I'm not kidding. We are sitting in India. We are sitting in the land of opportunity. Where what? A $3.5 trillion dollar consumer economy. एक election cycle में हम double करेंगे. Right? The tailwinds in our favor. The international world is looking at India, is looking at the women in India to really lead the future economic growth of not just South Asia, but of the world. If we are not leaning in, that's 50% of India not leaning in, not doing what we have as potential, not just for ourselves individually, but for the nation. So this is something I think we're super passionate about. And I think the reality is that like the women I interact with, right, the younger generation, they're so, both men and women, by the way, so inspiring. The young men in my teams, कोई bias लेकर नहीं आते, कोई bias नहीं है. They come with a clean slate. Biases get formed when you join organizations that have biases, when you work with people who have biases. They don't come in with biases. Women and men come in completely equal. And therefore, it is even more our duty as organizations to ensure that those biases never even come in, never even hamper a conversation or the ability or the aspiration of the woman who's supremely capable at the time when she's entering the workforce. So I think it's super critical.
Very well said. Naiyya has said a very, very good point that the biases and the unconscious, subconscious, unconscious biases that come in, that happens. I'll tell you something very openly to women. You know, they do themselves to each other. We talked about a lot about body shaming and all. They do to each other as well at workplaces. I used to tell my team, don't talk about weight in front of the guys. You know, you want to have that conversation, go to the restroom and talk. You know, you are putting yourself down. Why are you allowing another boy to comment on you? Don't do that. But women are conditioned to think in that way. Why? Your work is speaking for yourself. You're maybe much better than the man, but don't talk of frivolous things. And I think it rests with us to ensure, and as Naiyya very rightly said, it should start from the top. If the top organization, the top leadership is completely pro-women, and not pro-women, I'll say, completely gender neutral, I think the buck stops there. Anyone else who would, Zeeshan?
So for us at Maersk, it has been, changing culture one day at a time, right? And it starts, like you said, with understanding, that there is an unconscious bias and accepting that, right? And starting to talk about that, calling it out. And, Naiyya gave an example in her first session, right? Where somebody is discriminating because, she's a woman entrepreneur, right? And that happens in corporates, and you've got to correct that as a leader, right? Because you've got to correct someone when they actually ask these kind of questions. So it starts with that and building that culture. The second thing is that you've got to get out tokenism, and you've got to start sort of, there are a lot of people who just say things because they want to say it, or because, it's the right thing to say, but, really, really get it into the minds and hearts, right? And that's actually the tough part, right? Because, people will pretend to sort of say, oh, we want diversity, but, actually it will not translate. So there are metrics that, you can start looking at. One of the metrics we look at is when we do a salary review, for example, we see whether there's equity, right? So you just have an Excel formula plugged in, simple practice, you can see whether you're, remunerating fairly. And then you ask the questions. Recruitment, again, the same thing, right? You ask the question saying, you hired, let's say, 10 people in the last few months, and, our talent acquisition team will ask you saying, really, as in, your ratio is skewed. And they would challenge leaders saying, why is it like this? So these are small things, and, you've got to do it over a period of time and, keep doing them. And then there is stories, right? And, there are stories at Maersk. We are very proud that, we've set up, an all-women warehouse, an all-women shift warehouse in a place in Uttar Pradesh. And, this is a shift where everything, right, from operating the warehouse, the security, etc., is being run by women. And it took us a lot of time, actually, to convince their families to do that. But these are the kind of stories that, that we're able to build. And then, once somebody does it, then it breaks that stereotype. It allows, for others to also challenge. And then, the journey continues. So that's a little bit of, how we've gone about it. Of course, there's a long way ahead. There's still a lot of bias. There's still a lot of stereotypes, but it is one step at a time.
Thanks, Zeeshan.
Yes.
You want to add something?
What Naiyya was saying was exactly what I had in mind. I mean, diversity and inclusion, many of the organizations do just for a board purpose, or you give a seat at the board, that is it. Your policy is tick marked, and that's not how it is to be. So a lot depends on the organizations that come up with these policies, and they need to put it into action more often. So only then the headwinds that stop women from progressing or advancing should be converted into tailwinds where they can progress as a team togetherness, support each other in the journey. And that's how Federal Bank has also become one of the very rare organizations in India where we have more than 40% of workforce is women. Because we have a supporting environment where we grow together, and the organization also supports, not because it's many times when it comes to DEI questions, the organization or the management has to face questions like what is the profitability of employing more women in workforce, whether it's profitable, right? We have had many such, even some studies showing that women on board means X percentage of growth in share prices, profitability, and compared to vis-a-vis the companies that don't have women on board. But that sort of conversations should, I don't know if that is the right way to look at it. It's more like what is natural. I mean, your 50% of the population is being what is representative, and your organization should be a natural microcosm of that. So that is how it should be looked at, and it will have its own advantages in terms of connecting to a particular kind of customer, client acquisition and business, in relating to your leadership styles, in connecting to your employees. So that parity has to be a natural choice for organizations, and it shouldn't be something that is thrust upon them because it's a policy matter and somebody demands it. Like for instance, Federal Bank is one of the organizations that started a creche for its women employees much before the national labor rules came for that. More than 50 employees, you need to have a creche. We started it much earlier on a participative basis because we wanted, some of the mothers wanted that, and we went up to the organization and told, like, you please help us set up this. And that kind of flat organizations, the communication wherever it happens, that is the kind of organizations that support women to grow up in their career.
Thank you. I'll just come to you, Bincy. I just wanted to say something that, India has always been at the forefront. We have had women prime minister, we have a woman president now. We were one of the first countries. It was never a question that women won't be allowed to vote. In the United States, voting to women was, I think, given in 1970s or something like that, 1965 or 70. So women have been at the forefront in a lot of places. When I look at, I was in tech, now I'm in the, education sector, mainly as an, working for my alma mater. I see that the number of women in STEM has gone up so tremendously, which was not there. When I studied, I was the only one Indian woman in the class, and my parents were progressive and they sent me out. But now you see that so many women are wanting to go abroad and, pursue their studies, do well, whatever. So what are your thoughts, Bincy, on that, about young women progressing out to, wider markets and ensuring that, they have very stable professions?
Yeah, that's of course a very welcome change that is seen now. Like even young girls, their aspirations are very, very high. Means something which I wouldn't have dreamt of when I was small. Their aspirations are so high that you cannot imagine. Actually, that's very welcome. That's a very welcome change for India. It's not studying abroad or in India or taking higher positions. Like when we grow, and another thing to the younger generation is what I feel like. Like being women, we focus on doing something more, we put in much into what we do. But like when you grow higher up in the organization, it's not the only the work that you do. You should focus on what you can bring to the table. Maybe what you do is only be 50% or maybe something, your daily work will count only to that. What more you can bring to the table to make your voice be heard, just to say that you have brought something extra to the table, that also we should be focusing on going forward.
I wanted to come to you.
So I want to actually touch on this specific question. And the reason I do a couple of these talks and these panels and these interactions is because I grew up in Calcutta. I'm actually a services kid. My mom was in the civil services. So grew up, never thinking कि life में, I was a very bad student, by the way, in high school. But ambition था, कुछ बनना है, life में कुछ करना है, right? Went on to Harvard Business School, went on 2 scholarships, the Fulbright and the Tata, came back to India, startup kara, Baby Chakra. The day I was starting Baby Chakra, I was sitting at my dining table, right? Pressure cooker piche, there was someone making rajma in the house, like the cook, and I was doing an investor call. I was like, okay, put on mute, okay, please put off the pressure cooker. But public company banenge ek din. Unicorn banenge pehle, fir public company banenge. Ye aspiration tha. Abhi unicorn ban gaye hain. Hopefully 2 saal mein public company bhi.
Very good.
All I'm telling you is, when you meet me in person, which I hope we get to do after this, I'm just a normal girl who had aspirations, who had a dream. And I'm still on my journey. I'm failing every day. I'm learning every day. So all I would say in this crowd, where I see some amazing, like really bright, smiley faces, please don't lose ambition.
Yes.
And when you don't lose ambition, you will make the world ensure that you win. Just don't lose ambition.
Absolutely, bang on.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that because...
No, absolutely. Don't lose ambition. I think she couldn't have put it better than Naiyya, that she said that don't lose ambition. I think ambition is what drives us. It's the fuel, it's the propeller, it's everything. Because the day you lose the big picture, you're gone. Ambition is what, you want to show up every day. Come what may, you have to show up every day. You just can't take it like, aaj man nahi kar raha hai, kal nahi man kar raha hai. It's not like that. It's like you have to show up every day. I know we would like to take some audience questions also. So Zeeshan, what would be your comments to the team?
Well, I'm, I think really impressed, and it's such a great role model that we have here at Naiyya. Really pushing on everyone in the audience. I think firstly, this is a great session, and so privileged to be here and be on this panel. I think from my side, I think there is obviously both sides to it. We need to have women with big aspirations, and we need to have men who are also equally supportive and who are also opening doors and being allies. And I think this is such a great session today where we are actually talking about this.
Bincy, you would like to say some words to the audience? What would you like to say? Then we'll take some audience questions.
To the audience, like what I would say, to continue what he said, and what Naiyya said, that never lose ambition. Like going higher up or something, women after a certain stage, they become complacent. Okay, I have reached so far, this is enough. That should not be the attitude. That fire should be there throughout your, till whatever age you can do something productively, that fire should be continuously in you. Never get tired, or even if you have reached a certain point of success, don't become complacent. Try for higher, reach for higher levels. Only then, you can improve, the society can improve, the world at large will improve, only if you keep your fire on.
Yes, I would just recall the earlier speakers here, one of the 2 fabulous speakers who came from the army. Colonel was speaking earlier, Anila Khatri was speaking, and I was hugely inspired by her, the way she put it across. Think simple, and nobody would imagine army or the forces to be a woman-friendly workplace 10 years ago or 5 years ago. See what they have proven with their life and how they have simplified things to an extent that is relatable to all. It's gender, we should be aspiring for a gender agnostic workplace where we get an equal seat, and Never stop following your passions and your dreams, and it will get you there to a gender agnostic world. That's what I wanted to leave as a message.
I think my panelists have been unequivocal and have said some wonderful things. I would like to say that, I have a saying which I always like to use, and it's been there for years with me. If you want to plan for 1 year, plant rice. If you want to plan for 20 years, plant a tree. If you want to plan for 100 years, plant education. Education is extremely important, and I think, the younger generation understands that, everyone understands that, but education is not the be-all and end-all. We have seen so many people who are being entrepreneurs, even from rural backgrounds or whatever. It's the zeal, it's the ambition in the end which propels you. Education is one part of it if you want to have a very skilled job or whatever. So the other thing, I spoke earlier also in the panel, someone was asking me that I think the parents should raise, the sons like daughters too. So it cannot be said, ye tumhara kaam nahi hai, ye ladki ka kaam hai. It starts from home. The moment you start treating both your children equally, I think all this gender inequality will lessen quite a bit. That was a little heavy, but having said that, do any of you want to add anything, or I'll ask for questions from the audience, and then they can we have 2 minutes to go, so we'll take a few questions. Yes, please.
Why don't you come on stage?
We have very less time, so I can just take 2 questions. Please come here.
Hi. It's really inspiring to see you all speak, and my question is to Naiyya. Naiyya, as a young woman having it all, it seems like you have it all and you're balancing it so well. I heard Nindra Nui say once that a working woman has to live 48 hours within 24 hours, especially a mother. So how do you feel being a young mother? Do you ever feel the guilt of leaving your child behind? Or is it always that you're so motivated and inspired that there's never any guilt or a sense of loss or a sense of fear that you're leaving the child and not being there present with the child? Because I see some friends of mine who are young mothers and they're homemakers. Some people choose that as well. So what is your point of view in choosing to have a career at the same time being a mother?
Yeah, you better start because...
So it's a great question. Thank you for asking. And, honestly, my mother was a working woman, right? She's retired now, but she was a working woman. So I always grew up with this paradigm that mere ghar mein khud role model, right? That my mom was working. I never felt that I was less loved by her because she was working. Of course, when Arya was born, I did go through this whole feeling, In fact, interesting story, right? While I'm talking about all this, when I found out I was pregnant, I came out of the bathroom finding out I was pregnant, right? TMI. But I actually started crying. I was like, oh my God, what will I tell my team? What will I tell my investors? Right? How will they think of me now? So there are these things in our head, right, that are still deeply conditioned. We have to get rid of. But I'll tell you how it's played out for me. First, I can very proudly and very happily say, and rightly so, my husband's very equal in parenting with me, right? He's an equal caregiver, sometimes more so equal, that's one. Number two, I have learned to also understand that if something makes me happy, that happiness makes me a happier person, I will be a happier mother with Arya, right? I don't ever want Arya and me to have a relationship when I look back at life and I'm like, I had to sacrifice because of you. She should say, my mother lived her dream, right? She's a happy person. And I know now, she's a girl, right? So I know now that I have to live my dream out and see it play out. So for me, I feel like it's almost a responsibility in some sense to ensure that she knows what it is, what ambition means, what aspiration means, right? Just one, of course, very practical piece. I think someone talked about these 3 balls, right? Family, friends, and work. There is no friends. I'm sorry, I've lost all my friends in the equation. I mean, I'm a loyal friend. I don't socialize at all. I think it's more family and work. That's the trade-off I've really genuinely had to make.
I think one very beautiful thing that you said that I want to take away is that a happier person will make other people around them happy. If you're not satisfied yourself, you'll always live with resentment. Correct. And that is not nice.
Absolutely well said. Happiness is in yourself. I mean, but we say it, but we don't live it. I think Naiyya is living it, you know. It's very easy to say, platitudes, but in the end you have to live through them also.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just give the mic back. Is there anyone else who wants a question? Yeah, go ahead. She had a question. Okay, she had a question before. Can you take it from there because we are running short of time? Yeah, just come.
Hello everyone, good evening. So I just wanted to understand your point of view as I am an HR as a professional, and so what happens is that in industry we are asked to ask certain questions in an interview, especially to women, that when are you getting married, when is the right time, is it something which you are planning in terms of family or so. So what is your point of view, because as an HR I am actually dealing with these kind of issues a lot. And sometimes because of the management pressure, we had to lose very talented people. So how to address this?
I'll take that question. I don't know which segment you work in, but I would say that you should have a meeting and be very specific. These questions you cannot ask any candidates today. You cannot ask that. If you ask in the US or someone, you will be legally fired.
But in India, ma'am, still there are people are asking these questions, and even as a candidate also, when I go and when I get myself interviewed, people do ask such questions, that what are your plans? When are you getting married? If you're married, then they'll ask you that when are you planning for a family? So these are this is very commonly asked questions in an interview, especially in India.
So if you're from HR, then, my advice to you would be to really stand up.
Yes,
as in that would
absolutely.
be the first thing that you should do. And you really need to stand up for the unfair hiring practices, right? These questions are not supposed to be asked. In an interview. In fact, we've even gone up to the stage where in many cases we take off, when we are actually giving profiles to leaders where we see that there's a chance of bias, we actually take off the details of the name, etc. And we only give the a gender neutral CV to the hiring manager. So these are things that, you can do, as HR, right? And you're obviously the voice of the people in your organization. So my recommendation to you would be really be strong with this, and you have to be the voice of change.
You have to be strong, because I can tell you 30 years back, nobody asked me that question in TCS and then later in Wipro. That question is unheard of to be asked.
And there's so many organizations like TCS, in India, which have actually had practices like this, and they're really successful. TCS is one of the largest organizations in India. So if they can do it, anybody can do it.
Nobody can. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think we are running out of time. One last question we can take. Yes, please.
Hello, my question is from whole panel that we discussed about education, the role of education in our society. But on a second thought, when we analyze things, we get data like in cities there is worse sex ratio than in villages, and other data as well. So is it really education we are missing, or there are some other values we should implement in our society and which should be included in our, when we are growing up?
I think you want to take
Yep. I'll take it. Shall I? Yeah. I would like to say that education is different, and the value system that you inculcate in a society is different. Within an organization also, that's true. So values doesn't come with a normal education system. It has to be a larger cultural picture, and it requires a lot of societal change also to happen, and society should work towards infusing those kinds of values, and where women are treated equally. So with education, if you ask, gender bias and gender neutrality will happen. I don't think that is a long way to go only with education. If that would have happened, it would have happened by now. But since it's some more deeper, deeply related, impact than that, it will take a slow process, and it involves a cultural change as well.
Culture needs to be. I think we have run out of time for questions, so I thank the panel very much for doing it.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Let's have a big round of applause for all these wonderful women and one man, one wonderful man. I think he deserves a special round of applause, right? Thank you, please. Please. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Zeeshan, thank you. Thanks, Naiyya, thank you.